Hey guys, tonight we step back nearly 1,000 years and imagine what it would be like if you lived in medieval times. Picture yourself waking up before dawn, not to your cozy alarm clock or buzzing phone, but to a chorus of squawking roosters, bleating sheep, and maybe a crowing cock somewhere just out of sight. You groggily open your eyes to a straw-filled mattress that has somehow shifted into an awkward lump beneath you. The chill of a draft sneaks in through the cracks in the wooden walls, nipping at your nose. You probably won't survive this day, or even a morning, without a few surprise lessons in patience and perseverance. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop your location and local time in the comments so I can picture exactly where you are as you listen. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're jolted awake by a rooster, but not just any rooster. This one's your village's unofficial alarm clock, because there's no snooze button here. Roosters tend to be early risers, crowing as dawn edges over the horizon, often before your internal clock has a chance to protest. Remember, you don't have curtains or double-glazed windows muffling that wake-up call. It's pure, unfiltered morning sounds. You sit up on your straw-stuffed mattress, or rather, try to. These mattresses were basically sacks of dried reeds or straw. They'd get flattened and pokey after a few nights, like lying on a pile of poking sticks. No memory foam or fluffy pillows here. Just rough fabric sacks that sometimes smelled faintly of the barn. Good luck trying to get comfortable. Your bed is perched on a simple wooden frame, but there's no central heating. The cold drafts slip in through wooden shutters that barely close, and the stone or dirt floors beneath you don't help keep things warm. So you pull your woolen blanket tighter, but it's itchy, because the wool wasn't soft like the cozy sweaters you wear today. It was coarse and scratchy, sometimes even carrying bits of lanolin or dust. If you live in a village, the day starts early, before the sun fully rises, because work awaits in the fields and the day is short. No electric lights to extend your waking hours, no hot showers to invigorate you. You trudge out of your small wooden hut, the rough floor creaking beneath your bare feet, stepping around the household animals, maybe a chicken scratching near the door or a pig snoozing in the yard. Before heading out, you might greet your family members with a quick grunt or nod. The idea of a cheerful good morning isn't quite the norm. Survival matters more than politeness. And hygiene? Let's just say medieval people had a different understanding of what clean meant, which you'll find out more about soon. Historians still argue whether the wake-up rooster tradition was universal or varied widely across regions, but there's no doubt that in most places, people relied on animals' natural rhythms to mark the start of the day. No alarms, no smartphones, just nature's loudest ringleaders. So that's your first taste of a medieval morning. Rough, raw, and definitely not designed for the faint of heart. You'll need a strong stomach and an even stronger will to last past breakfast. You step outside into the morning haze, greeted by the scent of smoke, damp earth, and, let's be honest, animals doing their business a little too close to your doorway. But before you even think about facing the rest of your day, your stomach reminds you it's time for breakfast. Unfortunately, you won't be choosing between oat milk lattes and scrambled eggs on toast. No, you're about to face the stark reality of a medieval diet, one that's heavy on bread, light on flavor, and suspiciously low on vitamins. Let's talk bread. It's the undisputed star of your medieval meal plan, and not the fluffy sourdough kind either. This bread is dense, dark, and often made from rye or barley. Wheat was expensive, so unless you're nobility, spoiler, you're not. You're eating the cheaper stuff. It's coarse, sometimes gritty, not because they added fiber on purpose, but because the grindstones used to mill flour would chip off and leave little bits of stone in the dough. Think of it as medieval calcium. Bonus, it helped wear down your teeth evenly. To wash that down? Maybe some ale. Yes, ale for breakfast, because clean water isn't a guarantee, and the low-alcohol ale is safer than whatever's flowing from the village well. It's flat, warm, and a bit funky, like someone tried to ferment sadness. Historians still debate whether everyone drank ale all day, every day, or if this varied by region and class, but it's safe to say your morning cup isn't coffee. It's lukewarm barley juice. If you're lucky, you might have a bit of porridge, a gruel made from oats or millet or whatever grain was available. It's boiled until it's a substance. Porridge was eaten hot or cold, thick or runny, with whatever scraps were lying around, a chopped onion, stale cheese, or a handful of dried peas. No cinnamon, no berries, just survival in a bowl. And if you're truly blessed, say it's a feast day or your neighbor owes you a favor, you might enjoy a pottage. That's a stew, more or less, but the ingredients vary wildly. Root vegetables like parsnips or turnips show up, maybe a few beans, and if an animal has recently met its end, you might get a chunk of fatty meat or a bit of old sausage thrown in. These stews were left simmering for days, with new ingredients added as old ones disappeared. It's like a medieval version of eternal soup. Delicious if you don't mind your food having no clear origin story. Spices? Spices are for the wealthy. Black pepper, cinnamon, even salt. Those are pricey imports, often locked away by the elite. Your meal might be flavored with local herbs if someone in the house has a knack for growing them, but otherwise you're relying on the flavor of turnip to carry you through. You eat using a spoon made of wood or horn, no forks. They don't become common in Europe until centuries later. Your hands are your best tools. In fact, trenchers, thick slices of stale bread, sometimes act as edible plates. You eat your food off the bread and then maybe eat the plate, or give it to the dog. Waste not. There's no real concept of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like we know it. Meals are dictated more by daylight and the demands of work. You might eat 2 meals a day, or 3 if times are good. But snacks, not a thing. Your stomach must endure. Which is hard, considering food preservation is almost non-existent and famine always lurks just a bad harvest away. And let's not forget that where you live matters enormously. A peasant in 13th century France eats differently than a merchant in Florence. But for most, life revolves around whatever the land provides, whatever can be bartered, and whatever hasn't spoiled yet. Historians still argue whether medieval diets were as monotonous as they seem, or whether occasional seasonal abundance brought brief culinary joy. You finish your morning meal, heavy, chewy, and oddly beige, and take a moment to pick a few bits of grit from between your teeth. You're already full in the sense that your stomach isn't growling. But energy? That's another story. Medieval food is meant to sustain you, not delight you. It's fuel. Rough, earthy, sometimes mysterious fuel. Still, you're grateful. You have food today. Not everyone does. You wipe your hands on your tunic, no napkins here, and shuffle toward the day's labor. There's no skipping out, no working from home, and certainly no calling in sick. You work or you don't eat. And if you're like most folks in medieval Europe, you're a peasant, which means your job description is everything. Farmer, builder, herder, thatcher, fence fixer, amateur veterinarian. Congratulations, You're officially medieval multitasking. The sun is climbing now, shedding light on your little patch of land. If you're a villain, a kind of semi-free peasant, you don't even own it. It's rented from a lord, and in return, you owe him labor. So instead of tending your own vegetables today, you're helping with his fields, sowing barley, reaping hay, digging ditches. Tasks are assigned based on season, strength, and luck. Today, you're hauling dung. Again, the tools are simple: a wooden hoe, a crude plow if your village is lucky enough to share one, and your own 2 aching hands. Iron tools exist, sure, but they're expensive and hard to maintain. You may have a sickle passed down from your grandfather, rusted at the edge, the wood smoothed from 3 generations of calloused fingers. It's more sentimental than sharp. The work is backbreaking, and there's no ergonomic anything. You bend, stoop, haul, lift, trudge. The sun beats down in summer. The wind slices through your layers in winter. Your boots are just stiff leather, barely better than going barefoot, and sometimes you do. You slip, stumble, and scrape your shins on brambles. There's no neosporin. You rub on some pig fat and hope it doesn't turn into a mysterious medieval rash. And if you're not out in the fields, you might be making repairs, patching a leaking roof with thatch, weaving baskets, fixing a broken yoke, or helping a neighbor move their sheep, who are somehow always escaping. Medieval life is a group project, and it doesn't care if you're tired. Cooperation isn't a luxury. It's survival. Meanwhile, your village is buzzing with the dull rhythm of necessity. Smiths hammer at horseshoes, weavers tug looms into place, and children chase geese through muddy paths. Everyone's working. Even the kids, who are helping gather firewood or fetch water from the well. Play? Not unless there's time at dusk, and even then it's usually a stick, a hoop, and a lot of imagination. Historians still debate how much rest peasants actually got. Some argue there were more holidays than in modern times, thanks to the church calendar. Feast days, saints' days, fasting days. But even then, the line between holiday and mandatory worship plus chores is a blurry one. Rest was relative, and you can't slack off. Your lord has stewards and reeves who check your work, fall behind, and you risk fines, or worse, losing your land privileges. This isn't a fantasy tale where a brave farmhand becomes a knight. This is daily grind, every day, for most of your short, sore life. Still, there are moments. A break under the shade of a tree, the clink of a water jug passed around, someone humming a half-remembered folk tune. You catch your breath. You notice the hawk circling overhead, the way the wheat sways in rhythm with the wind. It's not much, but it's yours. And as your arms throb and your tunic clings to your sweat-drenched back, you realize this is just the morning shift. Hope you didn't skip that gritty bread. The midday bell rings. Not that you have a wristwatch, of course. Time is measured by the sun, the toll of the church bell, or the growl in your belly. For now, it means one glorious thing: a brief pause from labor. Lunch, or dinner, as it's oddly called in medieval times, is your main meal of the day. But don't get too excited. This isn't a picnic. You trudge back to your home, a modest wattle and daub hut with a thatched roof and walls that might wave in the wind if you look too hard. It's dark inside, with one window at best, and that's covered with oiled cloth or thin horn, not glass. The floor, dirt. The smell, a mix of firewood, mold, people, and possibly last night's stew still bubbling faintly in the corner. You sit on a bench, if you're lucky, or the ground, and share a pot of whatever your household scraped together. It's often the same as breakfast. Pottage, Maybe today's has lentils. Maybe there's a sliver of salt pork. But probably, it's more cabbage than anything. The texture resembles glue, and the taste reminds you that flavor is optional in this century. A hunk of dark bread makes a return appearance. You chew thoughtfully, trying not to chip another molar. Someone passes you a piece of cheese, hard, tangy, and wrapped in a whisper of mystery. Cheese is one of the few proteins you get regularly, and even that depends on how kind your goats have been lately, or your neighbor's goats, depending on your arrangement. As you eat, a few chickens peck near your feet. There's no such thing as indoor-outdoor living here. Everything just kind of blends. You swat a fly, elbow your cousin for the last spoonful, and consider how a handful of herbs could have transformed this entire meal, if only you had any. Spices remain the dream of kings and merchants. You, however, are chewing time-free disappointment. If it's summer, you might have some dried fruit or nuts, little luxuries gathered and hoarded like treasure. If it's winter, you're out of luck. Pickled turnip, anyone? Sometimes your meal includes black pudding or blood sausage. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. Animal blood mixed with oats, then stuffed into a casing and boiled. It's one of the few ways to make use of every part of the animal. Waste not, faint not. For drink, the usual, ale. Water is still risky, full of runoff, refuse, and rumors of bad humors. You might have some watered-down wine if you live in southern Europe, or mead if someone nearby dabbles in honey. But mostly, it's ale. Again. Warm. Again. Despite the rough fare, meals are communal, and that helps. People trade gossip, compare blisters, and swap advice on crop rotation, or how to keep rats out of the grain bins. Laughter bubbles up now and then. Even in a time of scarcity, people find ways to be people. Historians still argue how varied the medieval peasant diet really was. Some archaeological evidence shows signs of nutritional deficiencies, stunted growth, scurvy, rickets, while others point to seasonal abundance and surprisingly diverse medieval gardens. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Your diet depended entirely on your location, your lord, the weather, and a sprinkle of luck. After eating, there's no lounging. You rinse your wooden bowl in a bucket, no soap, just a splash and a wipe, and return to your chores. There's no siesta, no afternoon nap. The fields don't weed themselves. But you do take a second, just one, to lean against the doorframe. The sun is high. You're full-ish. And for a moment, you imagine what lunch might be like in another time, another place, maybe with tomatoes, maybe with forks. Then someone yells your name. Time to get back to it. Your stomach still churns slightly as you head back out, not from overeating. Oh no. But from the perpetual low-grade anxiety of life in a world where one wrong step could mean a broken bone, a bad cut, or catching something that no one even has a name for yet. This afternoon, you're tasked with fetching water. The village well is a good walk away, and the bucket is heavy, sloshing as you go. You pass others doing their own rounds, a woman balancing a basket of reeds, a child chasing a goat with more optimism than coordination, and an old man patching a fence with twine and sheer willpower. All of you form the same slow rhythm of survival, like cogs in a muddy clock. The well itself is more social hub than oasis. Villagers trade rumors as they wait their turn. Someone insists they saw a fox steal a chicken. Someone else swears the reeve is skimming grain taxes again. Gossip in the Middle Ages is practically currency, traded freely, often embellished, and surprisingly entertaining. You listen while tugging up your full bucket, biceps trembling. Then it's back to the main path, water sloshing onto your feet, when the wind shifts and you catch that familiar smell. The subtle bouquet of livestock, compost, sweat, and something less identifiable but deeply medieval. It's the scent of a world without plumbing. Let's talk hygiene, or lack thereof. Your daily cleanliness routine consists of splashing water on your face, maybe wiping your hands with straw, and hoping that the next downpour doubles as a shower. Baths do exist, but not daily or even weekly. In some places, public bathhouses thrive for a while, a kind of medieval spa day, but they're eventually shut down for moral panic and supposed disease concerns. Soap? Sort of. People make rudimentary soap from animal fat and ash, more like gritty paste than a lavender-scented bar. You rub it on and hope it doesn't remove your skin along with the grime. Clothes aren't washed often either. You might own 2 tunics, maybe, and they rotate with the seasons, not the days. Lice and fleas are constant companions, and you learn not to flinch when you feel that familiar tickle at your nape. Some folks even wear flea-repelling pouches filled with dried herbs around their necks, medieval bug spray, if you will. Teeth? Well, you rub them with a cloth if you're fancy. There's no toothpaste, no floss, and sugar's a rare guest unless you're rich. On the bright side, the lack of sweets means fewer cavities. On the downside, if something does go wrong, say, a tooth rots or abscesses, the remedy involves pliers, prayer, and pain. In that order. Historians still argue about how dirty medieval people actually were. Some evidence suggests regular grooming and strong taboos around filth. Others point to the lice combs, parasite-riddled latrines, and paintings of peasants relieving themselves with shocking casualness. And speaking of latrines, you'll want to squat behind a hedge or use the village cesspit, a shared trench that smells like a punishment. Toilet paper, try moss, or straw, or your left hand, but only your left, for reasons you probably guessed. Back home, your family might air out straw bedding, beat rugs with sticks, or sweep the dirt floor with a bundle of twigs. It's less about clean and more about less filthy than yesterday. You wipe your hands on your tunic and sigh. You're itchy, damp, and you smell like old cheese. But that's just par for the medieval course. At least everyone else smells the same. And as the sun begins its slow slide toward the horizon, the shadows grow long and golden, casting a nostalgic glow over the village green. You watch the chickens settle, the last rays catching their dusty feathers, and for a fleeting moment, even this mess of a world feels oddly beautiful. Just don't breathe too deep. As evening creeps in, the village begins to buzz again. Not with excitement, but with that low, steady hum of people doing what they need to do before nightfall. You're back in the fields, or maybe mending a fence, or hauling wood for the hearth. There's always something. In medieval life, free time is mostly a rumor told by jesters and monks with good pensions. But let's pretend, just for a moment, that you catch a rare break. You sit on a worn wooden stool, watching the orange-pink sky melt into dusk, and wonder, what would you do for fun? Entertainment in your world doesn't involve screens, power cords, or even printed books. It's social, local, and often slightly ridiculous. If you're lucky, someone nearby owns a fiddle or a small harp and might pluck a few tunes to pass the time. You hum along, badly, and someone else tries to make up lyrics about the miller's daughter or a dog that fell in the well. It's not exactly chart-topping material, but it gets laughs. On feast days or Sundays, the village might host a fair, with jesters juggling, fire eaters risking eyebrows, and puppet shows that somehow always involve a knight getting hit in the rear. There are dancing bears in some places, though the ethics of that wouldn't hold up today, and local boys challenging each other in wrestling matches. If a pig gets loose, it becomes the headline event. And games? Simple, strange, and occasionally dangerous. You might play stool ball, an ancestor of cricket, or camp ball, a chaotic precursor to soccer that often ends in bruises, broken noses, and some farmer's prize cabbage patch getting flattened. Then there's dice, a favorite pastime of bored soldiers and sneaky peasants alike. And yes, it's rigged half the time. At home, families tell stories by firelight. Folk tales about saints, monsters, clever foxes, or knights who don't know when to quit. Everyone knows the stories already, but it doesn't matter. It's the telling that counts. You might even add your own spin. Suddenly, the dragon has your neighbor's nose, and the maiden in distress sounds suspiciously like the Reeves' wife. Harmless fun, until word gets back. Some nights, a traveling minstrel arrives, dusty, hungry, and full of news. These wandering performers are medieval Twitter. They carry songs, gossip, and half-true stories from village to village. You offer a crust of bread or a mug of ale in exchange for tales of distant towns, plagues a few counties over, and the wild idea that someday a king might bathe more than twice a year. Historians still debate how widespread these forms of entertainment really were. Written records mostly preserve noble diversions, like falconry or chess, while peasant fun fades into the background. But clues from art, court records, and oral traditions suggest a surprisingly lively, if low-budget, culture of amusement. And what about romance? Well, unless you're already married, and you probably were by 15, courtship is limited. A sly glance across the ale bench, maybe a shared dance if a lute is playing, or you help carry someone's turnips. The medieval flirting handbook is mostly eye contact and passive aggression. When darkness falls fully, you light a rushlight, a cheap torch made of fat-soaked reed, or you sit close to the hearth. There's no electricity, no Netflix, no mood lighting, just the flicker of flame and the occasional bat that gets in through the thatch. You yawn, not from boredom, but because life here wears you down like a river on stone. You're tired, bone-tired, and the idea of rest sounds better than even the most thrilling puppet show. You lean back, staring at the low ceiling, and wonder, what did people dream about in the Middle Ages? Maybe the same things we do now: safety, love, a full belly, and a better tomorrow. Or at least a pillow that isn't stuffed with straw and fleas. The fire crackles low as you settle onto your sleeping mat. If you're lucky, it's stuffed with straw and maybe a wool blanket that smells faintly of smoke, earth, and sheep. The room is dark, the air chilly, and your bones ache from a full day's work. You shift to get comfortable, but your bed is little more than a wooden frame with some itchy fabric. The fleas? Still here, always here. Sleep in the Middle Ages isn't one long, uninterrupted snooze. It comes in phases. Historians call this segmented sleep. You fall asleep shortly after nightfall, wake up again around midnight, and then drift into a second slumber until dawn. In the middle, people might pray, stoke the fire, sneak out for a secret chat, or, well, engage in some marital activities if the kids are sound asleep and the goats aren't watching. Your dreams come light and strange. Somewhere in the back of your mind, the worries of the day mix with half-heard legends. You dream of saints and sinners, beasts in the forest, and maybe the baker's daughter, who gave you an extra crust of bread and a knowing look. But it's not all peace. The fear of disease, bad weather, or sudden war creeps into even the coziest dreams. Before sunrise, the rooster's scream jolts you awake. Not a gentle alarm, but a full-throated squawk that seems personally offended you're still lying down. You groan, stretch, and remember where you are, in a small, smoky cottage with your family all around you, packed in like firewood for the winter. If you're part of a large household, privacy is a rare and mysterious concept. Everyone sleeps in the same room, parents, children, and possibly the livestock if it's cold. Your kid brother kicks in his sleep. Grandma snores like a blacksmith. You roll over, trying to ignore the goat staring at you with unnerving intensity. So you get up. Again. Because in medieval life, there's no such thing as sleeping in. Today's big event? Church. It's Sunday, or a saint's day, or maybe a fast day. The medieval calendar is basically one long series of religious appointments, and you're expected to show up, rain or shine. You trudge to the village church, wearing your cleanest tunic, which, to be clear, is only slightly less dusty than usual, and hope the priest's sermon is short and the pews don't splinter. Inside, the church is dim and damp, the air thick with incense and wax. The walls are painted with crude but colorful images of heaven, hell, and all the bits in between. You don't understand the Latin, but the rhythm of the chant lulls you, and the priest's voice echoes like a spell. Church is more than a spiritual experience. It's also where you catch up with neighbors, hear the latest decrees from the Lord, and maybe eye someone across the aisle. It's medieval multitasking. Of course, religion isn't always comforting. You're constantly reminded of sin, damnation, and the devil lurking in everyday things. That mole on your neighbor's neck? Suspicious. The cow that won't produce milk? Maybe cursed. Superstition and faith mix freely, like mead and bad decisions. Historians still argue whether medieval people were genuinely devout or simply going through the motions. Some records suggest deep personal piety. Others hint at villagers more interested in when the next feast day lands than in theology. You mostly show up for the free wafers and because, well, everyone else does. When service ends, the village spills back into daylight. People chat in small clusters. Children chase chickens. A dog steals a hunk of bread and earns a mild scolding. You wander slowly, already dreading the next task. And it comes sooner than you'd like. Back home, someone's yelling about the fire going out. The hearth is the heart of the house. It's how you cook, stay warm, and keep spirits high. If it dies, you might have to ask a neighbor to lend you a coal. It's like medieval borrowing sugar, but more shameful. You drop to your knees, blowing gently on the embers, coaxing a flame from twigs and dried dung. Your eyes water, and your fingers go numb. But finally the fire stirs, and a thin stream of smoke curls upward. Success. For now. You sit back, soot on your cheeks, straw in your hair, and wonder, not for the first time, how anyone survived this era. But you're doing it. One itchy tunic, one smoky breath, one long church sermon at a time. You're not sure how long it's been since your last proper wash. A week? 2? The concept of daily hygiene in medieval times is flexible. There's water, yes, a stream nearby, or maybe a barrel outside the cottage. But warm water? Soap that doesn't feel like gravel? Actual privacy? Dream on. Your morning bath is more of a splash and sigh situation. You cup icy water in your hands, dabbing your face and rubbing your neck. It's enough to shock you awake, but not enough to feel clean. You glance at your fingernails, dirt under every one, and shrug. That's just how they're supposed to look, right? Bathing customs vary wildly depending on where and when you are. In parts of medieval Europe, public bathhouses still exist, legacy holdovers from Roman times. Some towns, especially in places like Islamic Spain or parts of Italy, boast surprisingly luxurious communal baths, complete with scented oils, hot water, and social gossip. But in your modest village? Hygiene is a DIY affair, and most folks only bathe a few times a year, usually around festivals, or if someone important dies. You reach for a chunk of lye soap, homemade and vaguely threatening. It stings your skin and smells like a mistake. But hey, it works. You scrub your arms, trying to ignore how fast the cold sets in, then dry off with a coarse linen cloth that feels like sandpaper. Refreshing. For your teeth, there's no toothpaste, of course, but you chew on twigs from certain trees like hazel or ash, which supposedly help clean them. It's oddly effective, in a rustic, bark-flavored way. You spit, then notice your breath still smells like yesterday's onion broth. Ah well, everyone's in the same boat. And then there's hair. Lice are practically medieval roommates. Everyone has them, rich, poor, even the clergy. You comb your hair with a fine-toothed bone comb, which feels more like scratching an itch than grooming. Occasionally, you catch a little bug and flick it into the fire. One down, hundreds to go. Historians still debate how dirty the Middle Ages really were. Some sources suggest that cleanliness was taken seriously, at least by monastic communities and certain urban dwellers. Others argue that the general population viewed bathing with suspicion, especially during outbreaks of plague, believing water could open the pores to disease. You, on the other hand, are just trying not to smell like a walking barn. As midday approaches, you help gather herbs for cooking and medicine. That's right. The line between food and pharmacy is deliciously blurry. Chamomile for calm nerves, sage for wounds, garlic for basically everything. You carry bundles of them tied with twine, their scents clinging to your fingers in a way that almost masks the goat odor. If you fall ill, and let's face it, you probably will, treatment is equal parts hopeful and horrifying. The local wise woman might brew you a tea of nettles and honey, mutter a charm under her breath, and tell you to sleep under a red cloth. Or maybe a barber surgeon arrives with his leather bag and very sharp knife, insisting a quick bloodletting will restore your balance of humors. There's no germ theory yet. People believe in miasmas, bad air, imbalanced bodily fluids, or divine punishment. A sneeze is met with a hurried blessing. A cough that lingers? You might get isolated or sent to a church to pray. The best hope often is just time and a strong constitution. To stave off illness, you wear charms, a rabbit's foot, a small cross, a pouch of herbs tied around your neck. They may not work, but they bring comfort, and that's its own medicine. You look down at your hands, red from scrubbing, nicked from chores, stained with dirt and sap. They are your tools, calloused, cracked, capable. You take a deep breath. The scent of rosemary and smoke fills your nose, the kind of earthy perfume that only makes sense when you live this life. It's harsh, yes, but strangely grounding. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls. Time to go. Because in medieval times, rest is rare, and dirt, it seems, is eternal. The bell echoes through the village like a call to arms, or at least a reminder that it's time to report to your Lord for service. You don't own the land you live on. In fact, technically, you are part of the land, bound to it through feudal obligations, and expected to show up whenever your Lord needs a body, a back, or a pair of sore, calloused hands. Today, That means helping repair a section of wooden palisade that protects the manor grounds. You trudge up the hill toward the estate, your breath misting in the cool morning air, the path muddy and worn from hundreds of footsteps, just like yours. The manor house looms in the distance, a timber and stone structure far more impressive than anything in the village. To you, it might as well be a castle. Feudalism is like a very complicated favor chain. Your lord swears loyalty to someone higher up, maybe a baron or even a king. In return, he gets land, and you. You get land too, technically, but it's more like you get to use land as long as you keep your end of the bargain. Plow, plant, build fences, dig ditches, carry things, and never complain. Or at least not loudly. You're a serf, not a slave, but not quite free. Historians still argue whether medieval serfdom was utterly oppressive or just a deeply unfair social contract. Some records suggest lords protected their people and provided resources in hard times. Others show cruel punishment for those who tried to run or refuse service. As you reach the manor, a steward hands you a wooden mallet. "Start with the north fence," he mutters, not looking up. You nod. Everyone knows their place here. The pecking order is as rigid as the church doctrine, and if you step out of line, you'll hear about it. Still, the work isn't the worst. You fall into a rhythm. Whack, pause, reposition, whack again. The wood thuds satisfyingly under your blows. Nearby, other villagers work beside you. There's an odd camaraderie to it. Jokes are exchanged, usually involving pigs or the priest's hair. Someone starts humming a tune. You join in. Occasionally, you glance up at the manor house and wonder what it's like inside. Warm, surely. Maybe even cushioned furniture. Real glass windows. A roast turning on a spit. If you're lucky, or cursed with talent, you might one day be summoned there to mend something or deliver a message. But today, you're just patching a fence that, frankly, the goats are going to ruin again by next week. After hours of labor, the steward waves you off. You're done, for now. Payment? Not money, but maybe an extra sack of grain come harvest time. Or not. It depends on how generous your lord is feeling and whether he noticed your hard work. Spoiler, he probably didn't. As you walk home, your hands throb and your feet squish in your damp boots. Still, there's a strange satisfaction in knowing the fence won't fall over in the next breeze. Maybe you're not free, but you've left your mark on something. That counts for more than you'd think. You pass others headed home, shoulders slouched, tools in hand. A boy pushes a cart with one wobbly wheel. An older woman carries a bundle of firewood taller than she is. Everyone is tired. Everyone is sore. But there's also laughter. Weary, yes, but real. You wonder sometimes what it would take to move up in the world. Could you become a freeman? Own your own land? Escape the cycle? Some do. Blacksmiths, millers, tanners, those with skills the lords need. Others join the clergy, trading backbreaking labor for quiet prayer and cold cloisters. You haven't decided. Yet. The sun dips lower, casting golden light across the fields. The village comes back into view, smoke curling from chimneys, chickens clucking as they wander home, and somewhere, faintly, a child singing off-key. It's not paradise, but it's home. Dinner time, finally. You've earned it. Your muscles ache, your palms sting, and your stomach is staging a full rebellion, complete with imaginary drum rolls. You return to your small home. Wattle and daub walls, thatched roof, a single wooden door that creaks like it's trying to quit. Inside it's dim and smoky, lit by the orange flicker of a hearth fire that never quite goes out. Tonight's meal is, well, modest. Again, pottage, the reliable slurry of the medieval peasant, a thick, goopy stew of whatever's available. Barley, onions, some wilted greens, a carrot if you're lucky, and a suspiciously chewy root you've stopped questioning. Meat? Not unless it's a feast day, or you caught a squirrel. Which you didn't. Still, you eat it with a wooden spoon and relative contentment. The warmth seeps into your bones. The smoke from the fire stings your eyes, but it also keeps the bugs away, mostly. Bread is always on the menu. Coarse, dark, full of bran and little flecks of grit from the millstone. It crunches in a way that's not entirely appetizing, but it fills you up. Occasionally, it also fills your dental cavities, or what's left of your teeth. Historians still argue whether medieval diets were healthier due to fewer processed foods, or worse due to vitamin deficiencies and bad dental hygiene. You chew, slowly, siding with whichever theory supports your aching molars. There's a small jug of ale to wash it down. Yes, ale. Water isn't always safe to drink, especially in crowded towns, so even kids drink watered-down beer. It's weak, flat, and slightly sour, but it does the trick. You take a long sip and sigh. Survival never tasted so mildly fermented. Dinner conversation is low and practical. Who's getting up early to check the snares? Whether the cow's limping again? Whether that traveling monk last week was actually a monk or just a con artist with good Latin and bad shoes? You laugh. A little. The fire crackles in reply. In some homes, families say prayers before eating, hands folded, heads bowed. Others just mutter a quiet thanks to whatever force they believe is keeping the wolves away and the weather half decent. You follow suit out of habit and maybe a little hope. Once the bowls are scraped clean, you gather around the hearth. There's no TV, no radio, just stories. Oral storytelling is everything. A neighbor talks about a knight he once saw ride past on a silver-armored horse. Someone else recounts a dream they had about a dragon made of hay. You're not sure if it's real or a metaphor, or just the pottage talking. Either way, it's oddly compelling. The fire dies lower, embers glowing like sleepy eyes. You pull a wool blanket around your shoulders. It's scratchy and smells faintly of damp sheep, but it's warm. You sit on a rough wooden bench, or maybe a straw-stuffed mat if you're lucky. Comfort is relative. Sleep is sacred. Before bed, you might say a quick prayer, not just for your soul, but for your roof to hold, your gut to settle, and the rats to keep their distance. You lie down fully clothed. There's no pajama culture yet. Besides, it's too cold to peel off layers. Your breath curls in the air above your face like mist. Outside, the village grows quiet. A dog barks once, then silence. No engines, no hums of electricity. Just the wind against wood and the occasional hoot of an owl, the night's original podcast. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder, will tomorrow bring more of the same? Likely, but maybe something will break the routine. A festival, a visitor, a tale of distant lands. You hold on to that tiny spark of curiosity, nestled somewhere beneath the wool and weariness. Just as your thoughts begin to unravel into dreams, a single drop of water plinks from the ceiling onto your forehead. You sigh. Medieval life, unrelentingly damp. Dawn breaks far too early. Again. The rooster crows with the smug certainty of a creature that doesn't have to do anything else all day. You groan, roll over, briefly forgetting where you are, and smack your face against a bundle of straw. Right. No mattress. Just a lumpy sack stuffed with hay that's getting itchier by the week. You dress quickly. That means putting your outer tunic over your undershift, and maybe yanking on a second pair of hose if you're feeling fancy. Your clothes smell vaguely of smoke, sweat, and soil. Basically, your daily scent. No one notices. You all smell like this. Today isn't for labor, surprisingly. It's for the marketplace. That sounds exciting, and it is, by medieval standards. You walk the muddy path with a few coins in your pocket and a vague hope of maybe finding a better knife or a small cake of beeswax, or a comb. You've been meaning to do something about your hair, which currently resembles a bird's abandoned nest. The village market is part trade fair, part town square, part chaotic circus. It gathers every week or two, depending on local custom, and is a swirl of smells. Fresh bread, drying herbs, mud, dung, smoke, and occasionally something alarmingly fishy. Traders shout their wares in a dozen dialects. A man with 3 teeth tries to sell you a healing stone that looks suspiciously like a potato. Still, the market has everything. Turnips, woven baskets, lengths of scratchy cloth, a few trinkets made of pewter or bone. You spot a barrel organist and a juggler competing for attention in the square. A boy with a lute plays something vaguely melodic while a goose chases him. No one intervenes. You trade a bit of your family's dried herbs for a small wool scarf, bright red, your only flash of color in an otherwise brown and gray world. You also manage to buy a sweet cake, stale but sugared. It's your first real treat in months. You savor it slowly, ignoring the sensation of something gritty between your teeth. The best part of market day is the news. A traveling merchant tells tales of plague in a distant city, which you try not to think too hard about. Someone else whispers that a comet was seen in the sky last week. A bad omen, obviously. Historians still debate how superstitious medieval folks really were. But judging by how everyone around you is crossing themselves, spitting or muttering charms, you'd say, very. A tax collector appears near the chapel steps, arms crossed, pouch half full. You shuffle away. You're not avoiding him, just giving him space, emotional space. Suddenly, a commotion. A local blacksmith is shouting about a thief. Someone stole a pair of horseshoes. The crowd buzzes. The accused, a wiry lad with suspiciously new boots, swears innocence. A steward from the manor steps in to settle the matter. There's no police after all, just whatever justice the local lord decides is fair. Sometimes it's a fine, sometimes stocks. Occasionally, it's just a very public scolding. Today, the boy gets away with a warning. Probably because the blacksmith also forgot where he put the shoes. Everyone laughs, tension broken. You exhale. Medieval justice isn't exactly predictable. By late afternoon, the market begins to thin. You've bartered, snacked, gossiped, and watched a man wrestle a pig for reasons no one fully explained. Your stomach still rumbles. You've heard rumors of cinnamon, of oranges, of something called rice. All exotic and expensive, and definitely not at your market. But it's fun to imagine. You pass a vendor selling dried figs, consider it. Then remember you'd rather keep your molars intact. As the sun begins to dip, you head home with your scarf, a handful of dried peas, and a vague feeling of contentment. Life is harsh, sure, but today had a flicker of festivity. Maybe tomorrow you'll plant more beans. Maybe the cow will finally give milk again. Maybe you'll remember where you put that comb. Back home, the fire is lit, the stew pot is bubbling again, and someone's telling the story of how a jester once tricked a duke by pretending to be a ghost. You settle in, scarf wrapped snugly, wondering whether you'll dream about sweet cakes or thieving ghosts. Probably both. The rain settles into a gentle drizzle as you reach your village. The familiar sight of thatched roofs and smoke curling lazily from chimneys, welcoming you back like an old, slightly grumpy friend. Your boots squelch through the muddy lane as you make your way toward the communal well. Fetching water is a daily chore that never quite feels done, and today is no exception. You lower your wooden bucket into the well, listening to the splash as it hits the cool water below. Pulling it up is a workout. The rope is damp and heavy, and your hands are rough from years of similar tasks. The water tastes clean, but slightly earthy, a stark contrast to the weak ale you enjoyed earlier at market. There's no luxury of bottled spring water or fancy filters here, just the well's gift, which you handle with grateful pragmatism. Nearby, women gather to wash laundry in the shallow stream that skirts the village edge. Their laughter bubbles over the water, mingling with the rhythmic thuds of cloth being beaten against stones. You can't help but smile at the scene, a moment of mundane joy amidst the hardships. As you walk back, you catch sight of the village blacksmith. His hammer's steady clang rings through the air, a comforting soundtrack to daily life. Sparks fly from the anvil as he shapes glowing metal into tools and horseshoes. You remember the last time you visited his forge, marveling at how something so hot could be bent and molded so skillfully. His work keeps the village moving, literally. Returning home, you decide to tend to your small herb garden, a tiny patch of green that defies the mud and dreariness. Pulling up some dandelions and wild garlic, you prepare to dry them for winter's cold, when fresh greens will be scarce. Historians still argue about how widespread herb gardens were among common folk, but yours feels like a precious oasis. Inside, the hearth fire crackles softly, and you begin to prepare a simple salve from your herbs, a little comfort for the aching joints and scrapes that come with daily life. It smells earthy and faintly sweet, a small luxury in your otherwise rugged routine. The afternoon fades gently into evening, and the village settles once more under the soft glow of twilight. Children's laughter quiets, and the familiar hum of night creatures takes over. You sit near the fire, wrapped in your scratchy wool blanket, the day's weariness pulling at your eyelids. Before sleep, your thoughts drift to the small moments of peace, the warmth of the hearth, the taste of fresh herbs, the camaraderie of market day. Life is hard, yes, but it's also rich with stories, simple pleasures, and the unyielding human spirit. Outside, the rain continues its soft murmur, a lullaby for a world centuries past but never truly gone. The church bell tolls softly as dawn creeps over the horizon, a gentle reminder that even in medieval times, the day begins early, sometimes a bit too early for your liking. You stumble out of your straw bed, joints stiff but determination firm. Today is Sunday, the day of rest. Or at least, a day with a bit less backbreaking labor. You join the slow procession of villagers making their way to the parish church, a sturdy stone building that feels like the heart of your community. The scent of burning tallow candles mixes with damp stone and old wood, a comforting but slightly musty aroma. You find a spot among the wooden pews, settling in to listen to the priest's low melodic voice, intoning ancient prayers and stories. The service is more than just ritual. It's a gathering, a shared pause in the relentless rhythm of survival. You notice the carved pews worn smooth by generations of restless children and thoughtful elders alike. The stained glass windows catch the morning light, casting sleepy rainbows onto the stone floor. After the sermon, the village gathers outside the church for a quiet chat. You hear whispers about the upcoming harvest festival, which promises music, dancing, and perhaps even a pie or two, rare treats in these parts. The anticipation warms you more than the weak sunlight. On your way home, you pass the village schoolhouse, where the local scribe teaches children to read, write, and memorize Latin prayers. Education is a privilege for many, but you admire the dedication of the small group of eager learners, especially given the distractions of farm chores and the occasional runaway pig. The afternoon drifts by with a slower pace. You repair a broken fence, mindful of the hedgehogs that have taken refuge in the brambles nearby. Nature is a constant presence, sometimes friend, sometimes nuisance, but always alive. You spot a hare darting through the fields, and for a moment, your worries fade. As evening approaches, you prepare a simple supper of stewed beans and barley bread, eaten by candlelight. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, making the familiar space feel a little more magical. You savor each bite slowly, knowing that tomorrow will bring the same routines and small surprises. Before bed, you reflect on the delicate balance of life here: faith, toil, community, and the endless hope for better days. Historians still argue whether medieval Sundays were truly restful or just a different kind of workday, but for now, you cherish the quiet moments. Outside, the night wraps the village in a soft blanket of stars, whispering ancient lullabies to those willing to listen. The morning air carries a crisp chill, the first hint of autumn settling over the village like a gentle sigh. You pull your cloak tighter as you step outside, the scent of damp leaves and wood smoke greeting you like an old friend. Today, the focus is on the harvest, an all-important task that could mean the difference between feast and famine. You join the group heading to the fields, the soft crunch of your boots on the dew-kissed earth blending with the murmur of quiet conversation. Everyone's hands are busy, grasping sickles, gathering sheaves of golden grain with practiced ease. The rhythm of cutting, bundling, and stacking is oddly soothing, like an ancient dance that's been repeated for centuries. You pause briefly to admire the sheer scale of the harvest, rolling fields that stretch to the horizon, ripe with promise. It's easy to forget how dependent life is on this fragile bounty, how every stalk represents months of careful tending and hope. Back at the village, the grain is stored in communal barns, their cool, dark interiors filled with the sweet smell of straw and drying wheat. You help secure the stacks, mindful of mice and other critters who see the harvest as a free banquet. Sometimes villagers leave small offerings, crumbs or scraps, to keep the pests at bay, a quaint blend of superstition and practicality. Later, you gather around the hearth with neighbors to share stories and plans for the coming winter. One elder recounts tales of harvests past, of harsh winters survived and unexpected blessings found. The fire crackles softly, casting warm light on weathered faces and hopeful eyes. You think about the simpler joys, the taste of fresh bread, the feel of sun on your back, the quiet company of friends after a long day's work. Historians still debate how much leisure time medieval peasants really had, but in moments like this, you believe it must have felt like a small gift. As night falls, you tuck yourself into your straw bed, the faint scent of grain lingering in your clothes. Outside, the world is hushed, the stars blinking gently like watchful eyes. You close your eyes, letting the day's gentle labors lull you toward sleep, grateful for the steady rhythm of life. No matter how challenging, the first light of dawn filters softly through your window, promising another day shaped by simple rhythms and timeless routines. You stretch, the stiffness in your limbs a familiar companion, and prepare to face the tasks awaiting you. Despite the challenges, there's a comforting steadiness to your life here, a quiet certainty beneath the ever-turning wheel of seasons. You start the day tending to the animals, their gentle nuzzles and soft sounds grounding you in the present. Chickens cluck as they peck at scattered grain, and the family dog wags its tail lazily, happy just to be near. You take a moment to breathe in the cool, earthy scent of the barn, appreciating this small sanctuary of warmth and life. Later, you make your way to the village center, where preparations for the upcoming festival are underway. Colorful ribbons flutter from wooden posts, and tables are laden with humble but lovingly made treats. Children dart between adults, their laughter ringing out like music. It's a reminder that even in a world that demands so much, joy finds a way to bloom. You find yourself reflecting on all you've experienced: the daily struggles, the small victories, the camaraderie, and the solitude. The peculiar punishments you heard about long ago seem distant now, replaced by the steady hum of life's quieter challenges. You think about how different things are today, yet how some things remain timeless. The need for connection, for hope, and for rest. As evening falls, you sit by the hearth one last time, feeling the gentle pull of sleep. The flicker of candlelight casts soft shadows, and outside, the village grows still under a blanket of stars. You let your thoughts drift, comforted by the knowledge that you've survived another day in this medieval world, and maybe even found a little peace within it. Historians still argue about many details of medieval life, but the essence remains clear. It was a world both harsh and beautiful, filled with ordinary people doing their best to thrive. And tonight, as you close your eyes, you are part of that story.